Well, hello everybody, and a very, very warm welcome to the Nürburgring for the third round of the 2013 International GT Open. Well, it should be the start of summer here, the 1st of June, but it has emphatically not been the case thus far this weekend. Yesterday's free practice was interrupted by inclement weather, and if the fog was bad yesterday, it was far, far worse this morning. The circuit almost completely whited out, and it meant that we didn't actually get on-track action underway here at Nürburgring until 1:15 local time. Well, the GT Sport team have done a fantastic job in rejigging the timetable just a little bit, and it has given us a very unique qualifying format for this weekend's two races, both of which are now going to be over 50 minutes of duration. So, if you follow the championship regularly, you'll know that the qualifying session is 35 minutes in length, which is 15 minutes for the GTS cars, 5-minute interchange with the GTS and Super GT cars on track, and then 50 minutes for the Super GT cars. Not today. What we have got is 15 minutes for the drivers who will be starting race one. So all the cars in the field out on track at once, and then there'll be a 5-minute pause. Driver number 2 will get strapped in the car, and they will go out 50 minutes, and that will give us the grid for tomorrow's race as we follow the man who leads the championship going to this weekend, Andrea Montermini, who is once more reunited with Luca Filippi, but Filippi, due to commentary commitments at the Spanish Grand Prix, was unable to compete in the second of the races at Portimao 3 weeks ago. Andrea Montermini did that one single-handedly, drove absolutely brilliantly, and overcame major pit stop penalty handicaps to bring that car home in third position, giving him a very nice championship lead. If you've never seen the International GT Open before, to explain, there are two classes. There's the Super GT class, which is for cars which are, broadly speaking, GT2 specification, but they run GT Open regulations, as we've got a spinner. That's Emilio Di Guida in the second of the Auto Orlando Sport Porsches, down turn 1. So your Super GT cars, broadly speaking, GT2s, but running to the Open regulations to leave the possibility of as many different masters will join the championship, and then the GTS class, which is, again, broadly speaking, for GT3 cars, but with the Open regulations, as one of the drivers in the GTS class, Giorgio Pantano, watches on from the pit wall. And so the former Formula 1 driver also raced in Indy cars, amongst other things. Big, wide and varied field this weekend in Nürburgring, as we take a look at Miguel Torrell in the Seyfarth Mercedes, and having a bit of a spin, fortunately, is the Duncan Cameron and Matt Griffin, and of course Ferrari with Matt Griffin. We love it. There is the Bitec McLaren of Chris van der Drift and Luis Razia, car which has been progressively more competitive as the season has gone by, but this qualifying session is a different challenge altogether. But all the cars run on the same controlled compound Dunlop tyre, but obviously, given the weather here and given how cold it is, they are going to have to take a couple of laps to get that tyre nicely warmed up before they can really start pushing. So at the moment we haven't actually got anything in the way of lap times having been set, and already we are a third of the way through this session, which is going to give us the grid for the first race of the weekend. That first race of the weekend is starting at 16:50 local time at the Nürburgring. What that means is it gets underway in 1 hour and 20 minutes time. So therefore the instruction to Chris van der Drift is very much set a good lap time, but whatever you do, do not damage the car. So heading through the final turn is Alexander Taukanitsa Jr., who has been very, very competitive this season in the AT Racing Ferrari 458 that he shares with his father. But yesterday in wet-free practice they had a monster incident, did an awful lot of damage to that car, and the AT Racing team have been hard at work throughout yesterday afternoon and overnight to get that car up into pace. Well, the first lap time has been set by the Rinaldi Racing Porsche of Marco Seefried. Seefried, something of a Nürburgring expert, having had considerable success here over the years in the Nürburgring 24 hours. Had something of a baptism of fire in the GT Open at Portimao 3 weeks ago, where what appeared to be a brake problem heading into the turn 5 hairpin meant there was absolutely no slowing the Porsche. He torpedoed Francesco Castellacci, eliminated from the weekend. So he will be pleased to be showing pretty strongly in the pace early on in the session. Also showing strongly, and I think it's possibly the, of course, Ferrari flashing his lights, is Michael Lyons. Lyons, who is coming to the Nürburgring this weekend fresh off a double victory in the FIA Historic Formula 1 Championship at Brands Hatch last weekend. Lyons, somewhat uniquely amongst drivers, has kind of got this double career as both a very successful historic racer, but also as a contemporary GT racer as well. And he clearly feels that he's got the car underneath him. He flashes his lights ferociously at Alexander Tauknitzer Jr. Tauknitzer Jr., though, is pretty much determined not to allow his stablemate Michael Lyons through. Eventually, he does concede the ground to Lyons. There's the of course team. Watch on in the garage, monitoring progress in what, in many respects, at the early stage of this session, but in reality, these drivers have only got just over 8 minutes with which to set about setting some pretty potent lap times. Siegfried is still the fastest with 2 minutes 4:7:08. He, though, has been demoted now by Miguel Ramos, who was the winner of the third race of the season, a home win for Ramos at Portimao. He does a 2 minutes 3.102. Up into second has climbed Andrea Montermini with a 2 minutes 3.227. And then Siegfried immediately goes faster. So Marco Siegfried a 2 minutes 0.885. That's a little bit more like the sort of pace that we would be looking to see from Marco Siegfried in the Rinaldi Racing Porsche. We follow Michael Lyons, though. And then the big Corvette of Miguel Ramos. Ramos and Nicky Pastrelli had a pretty wretched time at the first meeting of the year at Paul Ricard. They made amends for that at Portimao with a win and a second place, which has brought them very much into the title hunt, and all the Corvette drivers were just desperately hoping that it wouldn't be wet this weekend. Although we've had the delays and the frustrations of this morning and not really being able to get out on track as planned, the track now that they are out on it is actually dry, and so that will be the liking of all of the Super GT drivers, because one of the big differences in regulations between the Super GTs and the GTS cars is that the GTS cars have got ABS braking available to them, the Super GTs don't, and so when the weather does take a turn for the worse, it's generally speaking the opportunity for the GTS cars to indulge in a little bit of giant killing. So what sort of lap time can we get from Miguel Ramos this time around? He's not in too much traffic there. The back of the queue, the green car number 69, Marco Siegfried, that is the fastest car in the session. Car that he shares with Vadim Kogai. Rinaldi Racing, this being their home track. Home track, of course, for Porsche, in pursuit of Alexander Tauknitzer Jr. Accelerating out of turn 12 and then climbing up towards turn 13. The chicane flashing his lights is Siegfried as he gets onto the tail of Tauknitzer, rides the curbs, and then has the little squirt on towards turn 14. Tauknitzer, though, not really keen to concede track position, though. Evidently, Siegfried would appear to be a little bit quicker. Settles into the slipstream behind the Ferrari. And Siegfried, yes, he improves his lap time, but in fact has been shuffled down into second position. It's now Miguel Ramos who is fastest in the Corvette with a 2 minutes 0.254. Then it's Siegfried in the green Porsche, a 2 minutes 0.385. In third place, number 3, Andrea Montoni, 2 minutes 0.675. And up into fourth has come New Zealander Chris van der Drift with a 2 minutes 1.849. Jackie Cam in the Corvette, getting all tangled up with one of the SMP Russian Bears Racing Ferraris through the turn 7 hairpin. Siegfried will be looking to put together a good lap on this occasion. He heads then down out of turn 6, plummeting down the hill towards the hairpin at turn 7 before he begins the long climb back up. Up into fourth place now, off screen, has come the other of the Bitec McLarens, that's Rafael Suzuki. So he demotes teammate van der Drift. And also Isaac Tsumlu climbing up the order steadily. Up into third as well has come Diedrich Schitthoff in his Corvette. So thus far, the Ferrari 458s not showing as strongly as they did at Paul Ricard and Portimao. And we've only got 4.5 minutes left in the session, which is going to give us the grid for the first race of the weekend here at the Nürburgring in the International GT Open, the 5th race of the 2013 season. Will Marco Seefried be able to make an improvement on this lap? He's slipped down to 3rd because it's now Chris van der Drift in the Bitec McLaren who has gone fastest. Very, very briefly, Andrea Montermini is now the driver at the top of the times with a 1:58.8. And there's a little bit of heat comes into those Dunlop tyres. The Super GT cars once more coming towards the fore. So out to the final turn, accelerates Seefried, who failed to improve his lap time on that occasion. Chris van der Drift then it is who assumes the mantle of leadership of the GTS class and also sits alongside Andrea Montermini on the front row of the grid, albeit some 6.5 tenths of a second slower than Montermini thus far. But this is very, very promising for the Bitec team because the car looked to be a little bit of a handful at Paul Ricard in the damp conditions. Portimao, talking to the drivers, they all felt they had made a step in the right direction. They were just getting on top of it, getting the car set up nicely. And evidently that progress has continued into the Nürburgring this weekend with both van der Drift and Suzuki well up inside the top 10. As things currently stand in the session, which has got exactly 3 minutes left to run. Now, will van der Drift find an improvement on this lap? He is reasonably comfortably in 2nd at the moment, though, because Miguel Ramos is some 4 tenths back, and then in 4th is van der Drift's teammate Rafael Suzuki, although he's having a good duel for 4th position alongside the Corvette of Diederik Schüthoff. So climbing up through the final chicane onto the final turn, it's van der Drift. There is Rafael Suzuki's co-driver Giorgio Pantano, who is getting poised and ready for what is going to be a very, very quick interchange before he gets out on track for 15 minutes. So Andrea Montermini then, the pole sitter in this qualifying period, coming towards the end of another lap. And will he make an improvement over the 1:58.8 with which he currently holds pole position? Yes, he does. A 1:58.315. And so that gives him now pole position over Miguel Ramos, who's just gone up into 2nd by over a second. 1.015 seconds then is Andrea Montermini's advantage over Ramos. Ramos at the moment playing the hair a little bit towards Montermini. He's just running some 20 metres up the road ahead of him. This will be pleasing for Miguel Ramos. He and Nicky Pastorelli want to have another solid weekend of podiums. A pair of them head downhill. The other car here this weekend that has won a race, because the other commitments have meant the winners of the first race of the year, Enzo Ido, Maxime Soulet in the GPR Racing Aston Martin, aren't here. But Duncan Cameron and Matt Griffin in the AF Corse Ferrari. Well, Duncan Cameron currently in 16th position. Here, Matt Griffin, emphatic victors last time out in Portimao. So I think they will be a little bit perturbed to see drivers who they're really challenging for the championship with currently locking out the front row of the grid in the GTS class. We've got a very nice battle going on for pole in that class between Chris van der Drift and Marco Seefried. It's currently van der Drift who's got the advantage by 1.5 tenths over Seefried. Diederik Schüthoff in 5th. Up into 6th has come Roman Mavlanov. In 7th is Alexander Stalkowitz Jr. 8th, going well actually in the DriveX Porsche, is Nicolo Schiro. Rafael Suzuki in 9th, and Lorenzo Bontempelli in the Kessel Racing Ferrari in the GTS class completes the top 10, although he actually shares an identical time to Isaac Tukmulu in 11th. So diving into the pits then is Miguel Ramos. So he will not be able to usurp Andrea Montermini. He won't, in fact, get within a second of Montermini as Montermini heads out of the final turn. The clock hasn't quite ticked to 0, but I suspect this will be his final lap of this session to give as much time as possible for the switch over to Luca Filippi. And down the pit lane is Miguel Ramos. Comes to a halt outside the V8 Racing pits. And they will look to probably strap on a new set of Dunlop tyres before it's Nicky Pastorelli who takes his turn behind the wheel Well, there's Nicolo Schiro in the DriveX Porsche. He is in pursuit of Mario Cordoni in the Ombra Racing Ferrari 458. Cordoni, who shares the car with Joel Comathius, currently in 16th position. Always a very, very nicely turned out car. That Ombra Racing Ferrari, he runs wide over the curb, very nearly spits him into a spin. Cordoni comes through over the line. Unfortunately, he's actually lost a place, and so he slips down into 17th position. Much of the pack have completed their qualifying period. We've got one of the Bitech McLarens and Duncan Cameron just coming through. So it's Raphael Suzuki in the McLaren number 65. He doesn't improve from 10th, and likewise Duncan Cameron, who does his best lap of the session, remains in 14th. Look at a couple more cars through to take the flag. Andrea Montermini is one of them, although I'm sure that Montermini will have the Valour Course team on the radio to him, saying, you don't need to push, Andrea, you've got pole position. Well, as I say that, Montermini decides to continue on and complete lap. He's clearly thoroughly enjoying himself. There is Luca Filippi, poised and ready. And Montermini does take the checker flag and sets an improved lap time to consolidate that pole position, the 1 minute 58.284 for Andrea Montermini. Let's quickly run you down that classification. Then it is victory, or not victory, pole position rather, for number 3, Andrea Montermini, by over a second from Miguel Ramos in the V8 Racing Corvette in second. Third place and leading GTS class is Bitech's Chris van der Drift from in fourth, Rinaldi Racing's Marco Seefried. Fifth is Diedrich Schittoff in the V8 Racing Corvette from Russian Bears Racing Ferrari of Roman Mavlanov. Seventh place is Ombra Racing Ferrari of Alvaro Barber. And eighth is Alexander Salkanitsa Jr. in the AT Racing Ferrari. Right, we've got Montermini and Ramos summoned to the race director according to our timing screen, so that classification I'm giving you may prove to be very, very provisional indeed, because the first two cars have clearly caught the eye of the race director for one reason or another, and that is going to require further investigation. Although given that the race is due to get underway in 65 minutes time, it's going to have to be a fairly quick investigation. So we now have this 5-minute interchange period as the drivers who will be starting this afternoon's race vacate the cockpit, and they will then hand over to, for another 15 minutes, the drivers who will be starting tomorrow's race. So give you a quick rundown that classification then, and it is Montermini who's fastest. Second place is Miguel Ramos. Third is Chris van der Drift. Fourth, Marco Seefried. Fifth, Diedrich Schittoff. Sixth, Roman Mavlanov. Seventh, Alvaro Barber. Eighth, Alexander Salkanitsa Jr. Ninth, Nicolo Schiro. 10th is Raphael Suzuki. 11th, Lorenzo Bontempelli. 12th, Isaac Tukumlu. In 13th is Michael Lyons. 14th, Duncan Cameron. 15th, Miguel Toril. 16th, Jackie Camp. 17th, Mario Cordoni. 18th, Brian Wong, the Chinese-American driver making his debut in the GT Open this weekend. 19th, Vladislav Maliv. And in 20th place, Emilio de Guida, with Freddie Kramer in 21st position. So a slight pause then, as Montermini pulled to a halt in the Valour Course pits. He will be clambering up very quickly. Hand over to Luca Filippi. Montermini just feeding back a little bit about the car's behaviour to Filippi. So we do take a look then at that provisional qualifying classification for the first race of round 3 here at the Nürburgring for the International GT Open. 23 of them in all that we saw out on track, and the second drivers will be taking their turn to qualify in just a couple of moments' time.